Hey, cool. So we're done modeling this room. You can, of course, do a lot more to it. You can add molding. You can add more windows. And, of course, it's going to need props, but we're not going to go over props just yet, like chairs and stuff like that. You can model them, but much easier. You can go find them, and that's much better. I would suggest finding them because 3D modeling props is really boring. So let's get into Cinema. Let's finish this up. Let's add a floor really quickly. And we're going to go into here, and we're going to add a plane. And a plane is just this cube here on the floor. Or not even a cube. It's a square. It's 2D. What do we say? 24? Is that what this is? I'm going to change the segments to 1. I don't need all those divisions. The floor doesn't really matter. Like, it can be big. It's bigger than it. Doesn't matter. It's just for visualization. And what I tend to do is, like, I don't like being able to select the floor almost ever. I don't ever need to move the floor. Usually. What I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this, what I call the no touchy tag. It's actually the interaction tag, and we disable the viewport selection. We are going to take this plane. I'm going to rename it floor. You know, which is crazy? I just realized I haven't been saving this entire time because I'm setting a bad example for you. You need to save constantly. So I'm going to save this to my desktop. For now, let's call this room. Yeah. And something I want to show you is that when you make a decent amount of progress, unlike what I was doing, you need to save. And what they do is they make it really easy for you. You're going to go to File, Save Incremental, and now you have room _0001. And then what you're going to do is after you make another like good amount of progress, you're going to save again as incremental, and it just saved it as 0002. So if you completely blow up the scene, you screw it up beyond repair, you can just go back to 1. So the more times you save, the more chances you can go back and make more mistakes. So it allows you to be a little bit more wild, a little bit more free, because you're like, if I break it, I'm going to go back a version. Just remember to save incremental. That's the only thing. And I set a bad example by not doing that. So that was kind of a sidetrack. And we have this floor. I'm going to hold Control and drag this mouse tag to this floor. So now I can't select it because I don't want to have to select it. Ooh, and are we going to do materials today? Maybe we'll do some quick materials. I don't know. Let's go to panels. Let's go to side by side. We've done this before, and I hope you've done this many times. Camera tripod. Let's get into something more. Let's make something. No, we'll stick to boring today. We'll do 1920 by 1080. Let's grab our tripod. I actually have to turn on groups. Or what's it called? Sorry about this. I know you guys are watching me just like mess around. Null. We got to turn on null. I had nulls off, so I couldn't see my little selection thing here. Hit R, spin you all around. More. Hit Shift V. Go to View. Bring that up. Oh, not that one. We want to select this one. Bring that one up. Cool. And then I just want to see Garage. There it is. So we're looking at something like kind of better. So here's our camera's point of view, and let's go to user data, and we're at a 25. So let's make we don't have a ceiling. I'm not going to put a ceiling in on this one. So say it's a set. I'm not doing a 25 on a set like this. It's too much. Or even a 35. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to what's happening in this scene. Let's give this a scenario. This person's waiting for someone to come in the door. How about that? So I'm going to spin you around, not like that. Undo. We're going to do this like that. Hit E, and I'm going to move you there. So you're waiting for someone to come through that door. I don't know why. So let's go back to selection. We're going to select our camera, and let's go move it to where we want it to be. Let's do this. What focal length am I at? 35? 50. Let's stay hipster. Let's do 40. 40 is a hipster focal length, guys. If you want to be cool, make all your shots a 40 mil. So there we are. We've got a 40 mil. We've got our person just naturally hanging out like people do with their arms out. But let's add some light. So we framed up our room. And let's light this really quickly. So this is a good chance to show a little bit more lighting, though I'll cover this in more detail. Let's add a Chimera. So we're going to grab a light, and this is a good time to kind of show you a little bit about Chimeras. Let's make it a medium build light. So I didn't use a stand, and if you don't include a stand, no stand comes in. which is good. Because in our case, we don't want to stand. So we're going to grab the area light. So here's the thing. So this is kind of doing 2 lessons in one. When you build a Chimera, it's actually completely separate than the light. So the light still does light stuff as far as movement like this. Pan and tilt happens all from the light because that's how it would work in the real world. But the thing is, if you turn the light on, although it's showing it, nothing will actually happen. So the light is actually part of the Chimera. And I know that's kind of confusing, but it's what makes the most sense right now, at least for me designing Cinda Designer. And it'll make sense to you once you just know that that's the rule. So when you're using Chimeras, the light unit, it controls the orientation, but the light actually comes out of the Chimera. So what we're going to do is we're going to pretend like we're hanging this. And you could put grids in, pipes if you know where your pipes are relative to your set. It's really helpful to actually get that modeled correctly. And if you shoot in the same place all the time, once you do it once, you don't really have to do it again. And then you have a nice 3D model of it. Very helpful. Let's tilt this down like that at our talent. And let's select the Chimera. Now, you have to select the Chimera to turn the light on, like I said. Kind of confusing. I know it's confusing. But it's just something you have to do with modifiers. And you'll get used to that with the system. You'll see why it's good, because I can delete the Chimera and put a different one on. It makes this modular. So we're going to select the Chimera. I would select it up here, too. It's good if the scene gets too messy. We're going to turn the light on. And it comes in with a default brightness. I haven't talked about brightness yet too much on this. But as far as the power of this light, the brightness of it, is it comes in roughly, I would say, as about a 5K or 2K with no baffle inside of the Chimera, roughly on the light levels. And we're going to have to talk about light levels in a much more in-depth way, but just for now, that's kind of how I think about the light level that comes in at default. And it's 40,000, which is kind of an arbitrary number. It's lumens. But again, getting into the photometrics of lights and that sort of thing, I don't even know how I'm going to cover that. It's tricky, but I'll cover it. But just so you know, if you want it to be less, you could do something like 30,000. And why is the number so high? Just is. I could normalize it, but I'd rather leave it raw because these are the kind of numbers you're going to deal with in 3D. 20,000 lumens. But let's keep it back to 40. I liked 40. Actually, 40 looks a little bit hot on that wall, but we'll see how it actually renders out. I think it's probably going to be okay. And what you can do with the Chimera, I'll just show you real quick, is you can turn a control grid on, which it doesn't reflect what's happening in the viewport, but when you render it, it will keep the light in a more tight pattern. If you've never seen one of these before in real life, that's what those egg crates do. So I have that in here. So let's keep the egg crate on. Now let's turn the egg crate off. Actually, it makes it kind of noisy. What you can also do is spin the Chimera. Like if it was like a photo shoot and you were going to go for a body shot, you would go vertical. Not the case in for this. So let's hit Apple R and see how this all looks. Pretty nice. Pretty nice looking thing. I like how that looks a lot, actually. Pretty cool. So that's a very backlit shot. Let's go look through the actual window. So if we want to look through here, if you hit Apple R, it will render past the black lines. So I don't like that. What I typically want to do is I want to hit View, Use as Render View. And I forget if we've done this before. But what we're going to do now is we're going to render to what's called the picture viewer. So instead of rendering in here, we're going to render somewhere to where we could save it, which is helpful. Save the image. So we're going to hit Shift R. Or is it this? I think this does it too. Is this it? Render to picture viewer. So I'll click that instead so you guys can see where it is. And you'll see that it is rendering in 1920 by 1080. It's rendering what that camera sees. So this is it's a good thing. So again, I'm going to just sit through this render real time. So people who are on the fence about buying it, if you want to look at how fast this rendering goes, this is pretty quick. This is pretty quick depending on where you're coming from in the world. For a full 1920 by 1080 render, computers couldn't do this that long ago. Like 5 years ago, this would have been like 30 minutes or something like that. These days, that's pretty fast. And then you could ship this off to your director. You could put it in your PDF. You could do whatever you want with it. You go to File up here, hit the little save icon, hit OK, and save it somewhere. So that's great. So let's keep lighting this scene up. So that's kind of a dark room at this point. So let's put an ambient in here. Let's keep pretending like we're on a stage. And I'm going to bring in Let's bring in 2K Spaceflight. How about that? Bring in a 2K Spaceflight. This is fun. We're doing a lot more lighting than I was actually planning on doing in this. So we just want to add a little bit of ambient to this room. Actually, this is going to be quite a bit of ambient. Let's add 2 of these, and we have not, there's a lot to cover in this little wrap up here. We have to go turn on global illumination for Spacelights to work. We probably should have turned it on before anyway, but you have to turn on global illumination. And you'll only remember this either because you know 3D already or because I'm going to keep telling you on every single video where we light things, go turn on global illumination. Eventually, I'll put a little button that turns it on in here. But for now, just do it the manual way. Let's start with one space light and let's render from out here. And let's just see what this looks like now. Oh no. So if you're in a render like this and you're wasting time because I don't actually want to see this, you can just hit X. And yeah, I want to stop it. I don't want to look at that. Let's hit Apple R. And we're going to render to view because I want to see like kind of the behind the scenes view. So we see the GI calculation happening here. You can kind of sense what the space light's doing from this preview. And this is GI light, so it's considered like bounced lighting, I guess. And that's how space lights work in 3D. So yeah, so that added quite a bit of ambient to the room. Nice way. I mean, that's pretty accurate for a space light too. And this is a good time to maybe talk about the light levels. To change the level of a space light, we have %. And I apologize for these things not being unified as far as like, oh, like 20,000 means 20,000 watts. I'm working on a system that could unify these things, but this speaks to how lighting in 3D works, and I think understanding that is going to be a good thing long term. But essentially, all these controls, there's going to be some parameter that controls the brightness, and you just have to mess with it and figure it out, which is which. And I try to have them come in at pretty normalized settings. So this came in at 1,000, and that's pretty realistic for a 2K Spacelight for how we are lighting in this program. Now, this is a lot. We were just gonna model the room, but we got into lighting, and that's a good thing though. I think that because like lighting for cine design is a huge part. The lights, I try to have them come in at a normalized level. So a 2K Spacelight relative to that 2K Chimera over there, we have a 1K in it, but it honestly doesn't matter what light's behind it in 3D. It doesn't affect the brightness. I try to keep, when you bring in all the lights together, I try to have them be about accurate to each other. Though they're not perfectly accurate, but it's relatively accurate. And the thing is that so far we haven't been able to change the exposure of the camera or change the ISO of the camera. And you can do that, but it's a little bit more advanced, and it honestly sometimes overcomplicates what we're doing here. You'll see that we're lighting, but we don't have to worry about the camera settings. That's the design thing that I put in there for speed. Don't worry about the f-stop right now. Don't worry about depth of field. Don't worry about the exposure settings of the camera. Only worry about the brightness of the lights. And man, this is going to get deep if I keep going into this for too long. And brightness is the word that we use because brightness is perceived light level. It's not a scientific word. You're not like, what's the brightness of that light? Oh, it's 10,000. There's no, brightness is a human word. It means it's a perceived value. There's no scientific thing associated with it. It's not lux or foot candles, which is a scientific measurement, and a discrete absolute measurement. Brightness is relative to humans, and that's how we kind of work in Cine Designer. It's how bright it looks to you and relative, and that's how it's the high level of cinematography. When you work on a big set, that's how the DP works too. They're not like, I need 10,000 lumens over there. It's like, I need this to be brighter, a little bit darker, a little bit brighter. That's how we work here too. I don't have to worry exactly about the unit, though you want to get it pretty correct. In a way, you sort of don't have to do that here. And we're working at a much higher level cinematography, but we're using real world representations. I know that wasn't the best presentation of how the lighting system works here, but we're going to keep iterating on the explanation, and I'm going to keep showing you through example how lighting works in Cine Designer. So let's say that we like this 2K Spacelight, and the last thing I'm going to do is let's render through camera now. So let's actually hit this, and I'll show you something else about this picture viewer. So when you turn on global illumination, you'll see that this took longer. It's taking longer to render. It's doing some extra calculation, but in my opinion, this is still pretty fast, pretty quick. So I'm at 20 seconds of watching this render. If this is super boring, just fast forward a little bit. But we're just going to look at one last thing about the picture viewer before we wrap it up. We modeled a room, we framed it with the tripod, and we lit it up. Pretty fun stuff if you're a brand new cine designer or 3D in general. It's a lot of fun to learn 3D and have these real world representations of it. I really think that's a lot more fun to do than just using native 3D lights where it doesn't feel tangible. Now we're doing tangible filmmaking here, and you can use this for cine design to actually plan your shoots for real. Now, in probably in the next episode, we're going to start to go over how do you get better models, because not everyone's going to want to work with that little avatar there. Let's get some realistic people, get some chairs in there, some tables. Let's get this thing looking like a real room. We'll do that next. But what we've done here, you'll see that every time you render, it's in this view. So now we can compare the lighting. Can I move this? Yeah. So that's the light on, that's the light off. So we see that the backlight's doing this edge light on this person's arms, and it's kind of spilling on the back wall here, which we could have flagged off in 3D or in real life, but it doesn't really matter. And then when you turn the space light on, boom, the whole room gets brighter. There's still a little bit of shadow here, and then they're being lit up from the face, but the edge light is still there. So we have I'm hitting up and down. We can look at what it looks like to turn a light off and on. So like, hey guys, that's the 2K space light on. That's the 2K space light off. So that is powerful. When you're presenting things to the director or the client or whoever, these are good. These are good representations, and you're pretty close to knowing how you're going to do them in real life. Again, light level is not exactly correct, but we're visualizing. What would it mean to have that space light on? Do we like where that shadow is? You can change that. We can light this stuff, and you can look at it. And there's another thing you can do. Let's see if I can remember how to do this. I think you can hit A, B. So that's A, and this becomes B. Is that right? Yeah, okay. So now I can do this too. Kind of like you would do in color correction. Can I do it this way? How about like this? Okay, well, there's different modes for it. I don't know how to do them right now. But that is a look at that's going to complete this mini little series here of how to model the room to scale. Hopefully you can model the room that you're in, and you can drop a couple lights in there, bring in a camera, look through that camera, add some lights and render them, and save out those images. That is in a nutshell a very simplified workflow of cinematography design. And we've communicated some pretty important things regarding the lighting and regarding the camera work. And you can obviously move the camera around, move the person, find the angles that you're going to do. And next we'll look at props and getting better 3D models of people. And you've now seen like kind of the full cine design workflow. What you do with the renders is up to you. I can show you some stuff that you can do, but a lot of people have their own workflow as far as like, then I take them into InDesign and I make a cool document, or I bring them into PowerPoint, or maybe I email the people directly with those. I just text them those images. That starts to be up to your personal workflow. Like if you have like Basecamp or different workflow software you use, like I can't guess what that is for you. But that's how you make still images and render them out from the camera. And like I said, I guess this will be the last thing. This one feels long, sorry. We're going to go to use render view on this view, and we're going to build a tech view like this. And we're going to hit Shift R, which is to picture viewer. And we're going to let this render. And when this renders over, I promise this episode's over. And so is this series. This has been a fun one. I'm glad that we're getting to the point where we're actually looking at a room and looking at this, because now we can start to talk about real cine design, which is actually just talking about cinematography. It's not talking about how to use 3D software, how to use light in the computer. I'm happy to really just get past that, and let's talk about real world cinematography. It's like, okay, we're in a studio this big, and we want to create two looks. One's a testimonial and one's a 2-person interview. How do we set that up in a room this size? That's a real world filmmaking problem that you can 100% figure it all out right there. And not only can you figure it out, you can show the producers, you can show the director, the art department, the DP, the director, you can show your client, you can pitch with this. If this is the studio that you own and you're shooting with all the time, show them what it's going to look like in your studio before they get there, before they even give you the job. This opportunity to use this kind of stuff was not available until April 4th, honestly, for almost 100% of the world. Now these kind of tools are available for people, and there's a lot of power that can be done with it. There are a lot of companies that only do this as a service. Now you can integrate this into your company. as far as the service, once you get the hang of the software. And I'm showing you, this is a little bit slow step by step. Once we get into like deeper tutorials here, I'll show you how fast this goes. It goes really fast, especially if you're part of the early adopter program, and I will help you make sure that you have all the lights that you usually use. And I'll help you make your set in 3D. You're going to use that same set probably like every day and just like figure out setups. So that is it. So save this image out, save this still from the camera. There's your first Cine design. And if you're really feeling this and you're excited, put those images together and hit me up on Instagram or on Facebook. Probably just Instagram would be best, or email them to me. I really want to see what you're making. I want to see what you're doing. It helps me understand how you use it and how I can make this better for you. If you're on Instagram, hashtag Cinedesigner to me, and I'll be checking that out every once in a while. And as companies and individuals start to use this for real work, I'd love to show case studies and feature you on the website, on the YouTube show. Just give you a little bit of shine for doing this awesome Cine design process. So that wraps it up for this. I know this got a little bit long. I'll see you in the next episode. We're going to start to look for realistic models of people and more realistic models of furniture. And I promise you'll never have to 3D model a thing in your life if you do not want to. Anything you can think of, I will show you how to get in 3D for free. You can save it, have it part of your personal database forever, and do fun stuff. I'll see you guys in the next episode. Bye.